During the last update from the Pima County Sheriff, he reiterated that there are no suspects or persons of interest and that Nancy Guthrie has a pacemaker, heart issues, and could die without her medication. I do want to bring in Greg Sanfilippo, a Marine Corps veteran and Army Reserve and a former member of the New York City Police Force specializing in intelligence and counterterrorism. He's now the vice president at Doyle Security Services in New York. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and discuss all of this as we continue to get new details here.
Pleasure, Josh.
And I want to start by talking about this SUV that was towed from the garage of Nancy Guthrie. We also know this quote-unquote wired device was taken from the roof. All of this happening here just about a week after she was last seen. So I want to get your take on what that says to you, that almost a week later, they are now towing that car from the garage that I believe has been there since the beginning, but also this wired device as well after a tip from a neighbor.
Yes, Josh, I think it shows that the press conferences from law enforcement have been effective. It's not just about transparency. It's about controlling the narrative and also helping you get tips from the public, right? Keeping this case at the forefront of everyone's mind, giving out that timeline so people can then go back and jog their memories. And here you had a neighbor call in with a possibly a good tip, possibly not relevant, but it shows that the press conferences, keeping this in the news, do result in getting tips. The SUV is, could be a reflection of something that came out of that second ransom note. It could be a reflection of something that came from an observation from a neighbor, and then also shows the extra investigative support that the local authorities have now with Director Kash Patel was on the news last evening saying full resources of the FBI as directed by that local Pima County Sheriff's Department.
We also know here that Savannah Guthrie and her sister and brother have put out now a couple videos on social media begging for proof of life and any information here. One of them was Wednesday night and the other was Thursday. I want to play a clip for you right here before we get back into it.
We are ready to talk. However, we live in a world where voices and images are easily manipulated. We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive.
This is Cameron Guthrie. I'm speaking for the Guthrie family. Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward. But first, we have to know that you have our mom. We want to talk to you, and we are waiting for contact.
When you have family members who are putting out videos like this, especially when you're talking about such a high-profile case that people are paying attention to nationwide and really internationally as well, how can these videos help or hurt the investigation?
Videos are just heart-wrenching, aren't they, Josh, right? But they're not intended for us or the public. It's intended to just get that direct line of communication with the kidnappers here, right? Humanize their mother. It's the same way we're thinking about our moms and grandmoms and loved ones when we see these videos. That's the intent of these videos. And then to try to get that direct communication between them. And here we're not seeing that direct communication between the kidnappers. We're seeing a couple of ransom notes and then a lack of communication. So that's the intent behind this, and trying to keep that humanization of Nancy Guthrie, because we're talking about heinous individuals that did this. So we're trying to build that human connection from the family.
When you look at something like this, we're talking about the ransom notes, and they were sent to media members. We're talking local news stations. We're also talking about TMZ, for instance. How often in your experience do you see a ransom note that is sent to different media outlets rather than to the family directly?
It does happen. Here the kidnappers, by choosing to send it to the media and again, not communicating directly with the family, is trying to maintain control maintain that lack of direct communication. That's always a vulnerability. The more they communicate, the more they give the opportunity for law enforcement. But it's also that to keep it on their terms, right? We're going to communicate with you in the means that we determine we want to communicate with you. So it's a bit of leverage here. That second note, possibly even scheduled, because on that first note there were timelines. So again, a chance for the kidnappers to keep their head buried low, and less opportunity for them to come out and give a chance for law enforcement.
Sticking with the topic of the ransom notes here, how exactly do investigators go about determining whether or not we're talking about a credible sort of ransom note, or if it's something that is not credible? Because we already saw investigators say they made one arrest in connection with an imposter, as they called it. So how do you go about determining whether or not we're talking about something that is credible or is not?
They're purposely giving pieces of information out, and they will not reveal everything about those notes. So, maintaining some information from those notes gives them the ability to check to see, how real they are. What included in that note was information that would only be available to either Miss Guthrie or the kidnappers, right? So, here in that first note, it refers to a iWatch, right? And we know from the Sheriff's County's timeline, around 2 a.m. is when her pacemaker disconnected from her iWatch. Shows that that iWatch was most likely left behind. There was a distance between the pacemaker and the watch. So giving out tips in that note as to where that watch was left. There were comments about a floodlight. Things like that will give investigators a chance to determine which ones are real and which ones aren't. And then most importantly, signed by the FBI, is that, hey, we're going to prosecute anyone that decides that they're going to try to capitalize on this.
What about the public? I always, when I'm speaking in a case to a law enforcement expert, I talk about the role that the public can play. We know that this tip line has been put out. It's a number there, 1-800-CALL-FBI, as tips are coming in. The sheriff saying they've had more than 100 at this point. That was several days ago, so I have to imagine that number has gone up significantly in the last several days. But what role does the public play specifically in a case like this one?
Huge role, Josh, especially as we get past those first 48 hours, first 72 hours, when it becomes, quite frankly, it becomes more challenging for law enforcement, right? As the time goes by, and that's when we, really tend to lean in on the public and the tips, right? If you think of the assassination of Brian Thompson, it was a tip that led investigators out to Pennsylvania. So in this case, you're going to see those tips. They've been coming in. You maintain that the public should still continue to use those tips lines on anything that they deem is a little bit out of the ordinary, and let investigators give them a chance to piece the puzzle together.
How do law enforcement agencies go about combating the potential misinformation, disinformation that gets out there? That's been an issue, not just in this case, but elsewhere, where you have the sheriff putting out statements on social media, trying to clarify things that have been put out there on social media. How do you go about preventing that from happening, or at least educating the public to let them know that what you're reading there isn't real, it's not authentic?
That's a huge challenge. It takes resources to sift through all these tips, right? So, as those tips come in, you're getting a chance to categorize them and, rule out the ones that we've already investigated, and then, put in the category of live tips, things to be investigated. So, here also with the Sheriff's County saying, hey, we put out a couple of press conferences. We're not going to do any more press conferences until we have information to put out to you, right? So this, in a way, will then, hopefully limit all the misinformation and disinformation, because again, they're not doing these just to be transparent. They're doing it as a tool. So it's a big challenge. It takes resources, and and hopefully here, in the nature of this case, as heart wrenching as it is, that there'd be less people trying to be opportunistic with misinformation.
As far as where we go from here, I wanted to get your law enforcement take. What question or questions do you hope that maybe the sheriff's office, the FBI, someone involved in this investigation will reveal the information that could potentially be pivotal?
Yes, I pray the next piece of information that's put out is the safe return of Nancy Guthrie, right? So, the information that's been put out so far has been really in tune with them trying to get information, from the public. So, hopefully now that next information is her safe return. Otherwise, we'd really be trying to look into, hey, was there any, pre-indicators of Miss Guthrie being targeted? Were there any, was there any pattern behavior or repeated presence around her residence? Was there any digital reconnaissance of someone going into her accounts, whether it be Nancy's or Savannah's? Were there any threats being made? And again, only if that is a tool to help try to get tips, not just to be transparent.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and helping to break this down. A big case and a lot of information that has been revealed, but a lot still left to figure out. And of course, that is an ongoing search here. Almost 1 week since we saw Nancy Guthrie reported missing. That was on Sunday of last week, dropped off by her family Saturday night. Anything you want to add here before I let you go?
Josh, this case underscores a hard truth that keeping safe isn't just about locks and cameras. We need to be proactive with the intelligence on threats, awareness, and then early intervention. So, we just continue to pray for Ms. Guthrie's safe return, the strength of her family, and then the focus on law enforcement to wrap this up.
All right. Thank you again for being here with us. We definitely appreciate it.
My pleasure, Josh.